to welcome. Good to have you here. And I want to say out loud that anyone is welcome and everyone is welcome. So no matter what your socioeconomic status is, where you come from or what you look like, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, there's people haven't liked you in the past. You're still welcome here. If people have thought you were great, you're not as welcome maybe, but it's, no, you're still totally welcome. And we want to say that out loud every week. So, as you know, one of the places we've been going is this idea of the sacred in everything. And so, anytime that God inhabits something, it becomes sacred. And so, our friendships become sacred. Our conversation can be sacred. As Logan with glee points out, Harry Potter can be sacred. Star Wars, wow, can be very sacred. It has lots of theological stuff, and most of those guys are Buddhists. And
well, we vehemently deny the theological implications, but
no, it's there for sure. Yeah, and a lot of them are really good, wonderful things. So today we're going to do something we haven't tried before. So weird. How could that happen here? And so Matt, you want to explain it or do you want me to?
Sure.
Hey everybody.
Hello.
So something I love to do is share music. I love finding out people's personalities and different things like that and sharing music with them. That's something that I just kind of connect with people on a deeper level with. So in that same sense, I also think there's a lot of different spiritual aspects to music, obviously, and even songs that aren't necessarily speaking about God or talking about God can be very spiritual. So I decided this week to pick a couple of songs that kind of fit with the topic we've been going over here. And none of, they aren't necessarily all Christian, direct, singing praises to God and stuff like that, but they talk about love. So the first song, I'm going to kind of just go through all of them and explain my idea behind them. So the first song is Maybe IDK by Jon Bellion. It's a song where he kind of talks about all these kind of anxieties, all these different things that he kind of faces as he goes through life, and also how he's kind of unsure if God is there or not, but, he's kind of hopeful through all of that, so he's like, maybe IDK, maybe God is there, but, maybe that's okay that I don't know. The second song is Love is the Rebel song by John Foreman. And that's just a song about how our love for each other, our love for those on the outside, he says the love for the in-betweeners and stuff, that love is going to fight against the war that's kind of going around among people. And then the last song is Be Kind to Yourself by Andrew Peterson. That song is one that has resonated with me, and I think will resonate with a lot of people as you're kind of going on this journey where you can really be frustrated with God, frustrated with yourself, struggling with your identity and who you are. This song is just a reminder to be kind to yourself on that journey as you go through all of those. So, yeah.
So people can just listen. We're just going to listen. We're not. We didn't bring out the prayer rugs. We're just going to listen. And the idea is to interact with Spirit in this very sort of unchristian thing. You know, it's not overtly Christian for sure. And so, let the Holy Spirit interact with you, even as we just listen to this music. Does that sound good?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously there are three very different artists,
Right.
so the juxtaposition is going to be there. It's going to be kind of sudden, but I think they'll flow together nicely. And then Derek, you can just text me online if it needs to be turned up on their end.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Matt. Anybody have a reaction you want to say?
Howdy. I will say I have heard some unsavory things about Andrew Peterson recently, and I think something I've been struggling with lately is cynicism and being skeptical of people with whom I disagree, mostly because 9 times out of 10, they're jerks. And I think something that I keep having to remind myself of is all truth is God's truth, no matter whose mouth those words leave. And so, it's really, in a weird sort of way, it gives me hope that someone about whom I've heard not great things can still, God can still use that person to give a good message to those.
You're preaching to me right now, but keep going, sorry. That's all I'm going to say.
That was it. Sorry.
Thank you. So one of the ideas that we talk about, is all truth is God's truth. And where we came out of that was all love is God's love. And so if that's true, that would apply if there are two women that love each other, two men that love each other. That's God's love. It's not, you can't divorce real love from God and truth. And I want to add one. We've talked about those two a fair amount, but I'd love to put in today, all beauty is God's beauty. And just that idea of, those of us who have come out of the classical tradition, where you're taken up to heaven with the music of Wagner. Well, Wagner was a horrible person. Everything about him was what we would be absolutely opposed to. And
the author of the entire Reformation was an anti-Semite.
Yeah, so there you go. Derek. Thank you, Derek. God was empty. And what if we could still listen to Wagner and hear God?
I'm assuming this is still open for question time. Anyone have a response? I waited a little too long, it's fine. I was wondering how you deal with that as a Christian who cares about social justice and accountability. And also people using their voice for good. So maybe Wagner, I think we can all just enjoy it from the beauty of God's perspective, but maybe more recent people, I don't want to be too awful, but maybe Michael Jackson, for instance. I guess if he's passed away, that's different, but...
So it's relevant if they're dead.
No, I guess what I'm trying to say is, we don't want to put on pedestals people and, put our money towards people that are using their money for bad. And so how do we have accountability in that? Is there a place for accountability?
not an answer, but it's something. So if you get somebody who's homeless, they say, I'm starving, do you have $10? You go, I can do better. Here's $20 and a soda. And in that moment, they're like, great, I'm gonna go to Jimmy John's, get a sandwich, it'll be warm in there. And then 20 minutes later, they go buy some heroin or an overdose. So did you kill him? You
I
know?
think that's different. No?
I don't know. Well, that's kind of an extreme example of accountability, right? No? Okay.
Well, and so the answer for all of these things is it's complicated, right? There is no this answer or that answer, so it's all nuance. And you know, did you have a reasonable reason to think that that person was going to do that? Well, if you don't, then it's not on you. And I think that's even true with accountability as far as how we support artists. It is true that I try to avoid supporting artists that I have disagreements with. You know, if they are against people I love, I'm not going to support them financially. And so in that case, there's sort of the dead part does matter if you're supporting them or not.
I also don't want to shut Clay. What Clay said is important. I feel like it's slightly answering a different question.
Yeah, I think those are all good questions. And we don't have any of the answers, but we do want to work towards the answers. Thanks for that. So thanks, Alex, for opening that. We do believe that we can learn from all kinds of things. Well, so Harry Potter.
Right. Yeah, she's definitely keeps stepping in her own shit, for the lack of a better word. Her anti-trans comments are abhorrent at best. Yeah. And for many of us reading them growing up, it was the best escapism we ever had, especially for a lot of queer people. You felt yourself safe in a place. And so I don't know the answer. I don't know. I know this, and this is a good and bad thing, right? She's a good writer, so she's dangerous because she can write so well. So that's the complicated part. She can make you feel like you can escape, but then say abhorrent things on Twitter. And I just think you have to be gracious for wherever anyone's at. What I know for sure is infighting amongst ourselves is not the answer. Shaming people for not wanting to support financially or for people who are supporting financially just isn't going to get us anywhere. That's not progress. That's just a fight.
Yeah, great.
And maybe people who support that person, who maybe get a book by someone that bad or controversial, right? Maybe in their mind they really hate everything the person is saying. And they just don't know a better way themselves. There's also this assuming generous intent that is really tricky in this, but it's helpful. Not everyone who's supporting someone financially is out to hurt groups of people. And some people absolutely are. It's both and. It's complicated. I wish I had a good answer on it.
Yeah, it's really hard. Thanks for bringing that up. Did anybody else have something on that? So Matt, thanks for leading us there. I think those are really relevant questions that matter. And we do want to talk about them, and we want to see if we can get a way forward. So I don't have any good segue here to get into what we're talking about today.
But just thank you for bringing up the hardest question. And it's funny because I was texting Andrew the same thing because I met Andrew Peterson. I was like, man, I kind of like this song. He was such an asshole at Asbury when I met him. Literally the text I sent.
For your generation too.
Yeah, he did.
You know, I remember that too.
Oh,
and I just thought, really? Like you couldn't be a nicer person.
Yeah.
And you're singing really wonderful songs. I mean, that are beautiful and really you couldn't just be nicer.
Yeah, so it was funny that you brought that up because we sat in a room with him and I was like, man, you're so mean. Why?
And that was before our church arrived, so we will, I will segue into this idea of knowing ourselves and by knowing ourselves, being able to know each other. And the idea of different biases that affect us. We've already been through some now, let me go through real quick. Confirmation bias, the idea that we welcome information that agrees with what we believe, and we don't even hear a lot of times information that disagrees with what we believe. To my mind, this is probably at least one of the strongest, if not the strongest, bias that we carry around with us. And in our particular polarized society, politically, it is absolutely huge, right? Confirmation bias. Complexity bias, and oh, by the way, confirmation bias makes it impossible for two people to have a conversation. Because you can't accept anything that's not already in your belief system. So you can't have a real conversation with it. But
I was just laughing. I was like, Clay and I would not have been friends by the confirmation bias.
what?
Because he's totally different than me in every possible way.
Yeah.
You're both kind of the coolest people ever, though,
So there's-
You're giving me too much credit there, Michelle.
That's appropriate about that.
Yeah.
We can agree.
All right, second is complexity bias. We prefer simple things. And there's also some truth in that. You know, Occam's razor idea. So in the Middle Ages, they had a theory for how everything went around the Earth. How all the planets rotated around the Earth, how the sun rotated around the Earth. And of course, since they don't do that, they had to come up with a very complex system which worked. Do you all know this? Is this thing? Okay, so in science, you might learn this as a historical thing. So they made these, as the planets rotate around the Earth, because of course they don't, so they had to square their observation with it. So they made these little circles that the planets would make in order to match what they saw with what they believed, their confirmation bias. And so they actually made a system that worked, that actually made those two work together. But Occam's razor says, usually the simplest explanation is right, which is that we actually all go around the sun and not around the Earth. And so that's there is a place of that the simplest thing is often the right explanation. And there are, in the reality of life, there's so much complexity where we can't have simple answers. And then we are looking always for the nuance. Third, community bias. We go with tribe over almost anything else. And those of you who have come out of conservative places, you recognize this. As long as you are in the conservative place, you're not able to truly engage a subject. And by the way, go get coffee and tea and soft drinks, whatever you want, right? It's all there. And so we tend to not want to go against our tribe. In fact, it can be hard for our minds to even conceive of something outside of what our tribe believes. So if our tribe believes that all gay people are bad, we can't escape that. We can't get out of it. Complementary bias, the idea that if somebody likes us and compliments us, we're like, they must be true. Contact bias, you don't have contact with someone, you're biased against them. So it's sort of the upside down of it. Conservative liberal bias. Some of us have seen this in the world in the last few years. Consciousness bias.
You just didn't touch it, you're like, I'm not going there.
Our brains see from location. And empathy sort of depends on consciousness bias, that we're able to see things from other people's point of view. Competency bias, our brains prefer to think of ourselves as above average. And most of us are incompetent at knowing when we are incompetent. Which doesn't mean that there aren't people that know a lot. It's just a bias. It's not that it's always true, it's a bias. Confidence bias is our brains prefer a confident lie to a hesitant truth. So I'll mention one example for me, and then Logan, I'll give you a shot at this one. Part of the problem with Woven Church is that every week I or whoever's speaking sits up here and says, well, we really don't know the answer to that. People don't want that. People want a confident person. So that's how churches work. Big churches are almost always led by people with a very confident, sure point of view. Here's I'd love to know if this is true. My thinking is that a lot of millennials are calling BS on that.
Yeah, I think we're starting to, for sure. I think a lot of it depends on proximity, where you grew up, how your family behaved, what you were brought up into.
The other biases.
Yeah, all the other ones that play a factor into, growing up for me, it's you go to church, you listen to the preacher. What they say is true. Don't ask questions. Believe in a devil, even if it's traumatizing to your 5-year-old self and you have to sleep with an eyelid on for the next 4 years.
Is that a little close?
That's a little close. There were things I was just told, and there was no debate on it. This is universally true. You have to accept this as truth. Don't think any other way. Except for, if your church disagrees with another church, they're wrong and the church you're at is right.
Doesn't matter how confident they are,
Yeah.
they're still wrong.
They're still wrong.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, that's funny. So, can we, are you attracted to a person on a personal friendship? In a personal way, are you attracted to someone who is confident or someone who is like, yeah, I don't know, just interested?
The second one.
You're personally interested in somebody that is open to other things and questions.
Unless they agree with me on everything, and confidence is okay.
I'm by far the confidence. I'm attracted to real jerks sometimes. It's the whole thing. I mean, that's all. Yeah. Confidence.
It's interesting. I was the opposite. I'm with Kristen on this one.
Yeah.
It's because my dad had this value growing up that I could think whatever I wanted, but I had to be prepared to discuss it with him.
Great.
And he would poke holes in everything I said. Not in a sense to win, but in a sense to, do you have an argument? Did you actually pay attention to what was being said? Why are you thinking this way?
How was that for you?
It was hard, but it was great because it gave me this sense of free thinking. So it's been very easy for me to abandon a lot of the BS I've been told.
Right.
Because it's like, this just isn't working.
So the confidence doesn't really work for you.
Not anymore. Not really ever.
Who else? This is Rebecca, by the way.
I just have a random example, but it seems like every few months there's a new example from the news of somebody who's very confident
Yes.
and charismatic, who fooled a bunch of smart people.
Right.
Yes.
And so I think as humans, you're right, we have a bias towards, we can be tricked by people who are very confident, very charismatic. And so when someone's extra charismatic, I think we need to train ourselves to be a little bit like
Extra
cautious. Yeah, and it just like, it reminds me of how many like tech bros said, you need to get in crypto, you need to get into crypto. And they're like, you know, celebrities are having, you know, commercials about how we need to be investing in crypto. And then it's really all just fake money, you know? And it's just sad how many people's lives get ruined by people who are greedy and just want their money. So I think it's good to be cautious, but then a lot of us are naturally attracted to charisma.
Are you?
I'm like you, I think I'm a doubter. Like I grew up questioning, like we always argued with my parents and it was encouraged. But at the same time, I tend to be a more confident person, and so I have, you know, hundreds of thousands of people who follow my voice. And that gets intimidating too, because it's a huge responsibility.
Yeah, you do.
Well, and with confidence too, there's an elite structure to it, right? Which is something we don't value. But elites totally value it. They want you to listen to them, no questions asked.
Yeah, sure.
And they'll even poke at each other, calling someone else elite, knowing they're elite.
I feel that on, like, particularly what is the name Rebecca? Is that who just said
Yes.
things?
Yeah.
Cool. I feel the same way, especially when I'm on like Twitter or something or Facebook, and somebody reposts a post that says like, watch this person who's apparently a smart person totally demolish this argument, blah blah blah. And then you watch the video and you're like, they literally just said something loud.
That's so true.
Like, watch Ben Shapiro cause this liberal to break down and cry. It's like, no, he just said something really loud.
Yeah, the bullying idea.
Yeah.
So confident, but stupid. You know?
Yeah, and of course it's complex. There are times when we want to say something loud, and there are other times when it's covering up our weakness. Yeah, tricky.
Hey, this is Andrew. Kind of to what Logan was saying about the elite position, I think in my own life, I've noticed that I guess the word I've been thinking of is privilege with a lot of the loudest, most confident positions on things. Because to me, you can only really have that kind of confident, I have arrived at the truth opinion if that hasn't been challenged a whole lot and hasn't been examined from the points of view of other people who maybe don't have your same upbringing, experiences, all that kind of stuff. So, they're just without caring about the other views. And so to me, anyone who speaks a truth that they kind of walk back and say, well, this is true as far as I can tell, or to me right now, or based on what I have seen for me,
Right.
that to me seems a whole lot more genuine because it's kind of been refined in the fire a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, and for sure this is a politician thing too, right? Nobody wants a politician, well, some of us do, but hardly anybody wants a politician who says, well, it seems to me that this is our best path forward, but here are the reasons it might not work. You know, no politician ever says this. That they're like, this is the plan, it will work, and everybody who doesn't think this is stupid. I tell you, this is one of my hardest ones. Now there was a past president who it didn't work with me with. I won't say the name of the past president who was very confident in their stupidity, but in general, if a doctor is really confident about what they're telling me, I'm in. If a professional is really confident about what they're telling me, I'm like, oh, okay, they're confident, it must be true. And so this is a really important one for me in order to really be able to see people, to just keep reminding myself, oh, I have confidence bias. I need to look at this. I need to look at this more fully.
That reminded me of a really interesting video I saw the other day, which is the 4 things it takes to be an expert. One of those things is a valid environment. Politics is not a valid environment, meaning even if you study politics for 10, 40,000 hours, you will have no effective ability to predict anything. They did a study about people who were supposedly experts in politics, and they were wrong. They did worse at guessing outcomes than random.
Oh, Palmer.
So with the difference between somebody like a doctor or a car mechanic, just to name a few, is that in a valid environment you receive a quick response telling you whether you were correct or not, whereas in politics it's always different every time.
What are the other 3 things?
I forgot. You should watch the video.
Richard Rohr, whenever they were talking about this bias in this podcast that John had me listen to, he said this phrase, we prefer a confident lie to a hesitant truth.
Yeah, that's right. So we really, for this church to work, we need everybody, well, not everybody, we just need, in general, people to be okay with our not being confident. Now, we are confident of some things. I am confident of the equal value of every person.
Yes. Amen.
And that I wouldn't say loudly.
Yeah.
I would be confident about that. So it's not that we're not confident about anything. It's just that we have to recognize the bias of the confidence.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that love is universal to a spiritual experience.
That's right. Yeah, and with God, we are going to be confident that that love is the rule, and sin, for whatever that's worth, is not out of love. And if it's real love, then it's God. It's from God. Great. Conspiracy bias. We're especially vulnerable to stories that cast us as the victims of an evil conspiracy by some enemy or other. Our brains like stories where we are either the hero or the victim, but never the villain.
Taylor Swift.
The what?
Taylor Swift.
Hey now.
Don't you rag on Taylor Swift.
Yeah, there are a few of us that love
She
Taylor
did write a song called Anti-Hero. That's a good point.
In literature, an anti-hero is fundamentally different than a villain. So
It's true. Touche.
There you go.
Touche.
I
I agree with that.
You got anything on this?
Yeah, I think stories are tricky, right? Because we kind of need them to connect.
Yeah, right.
But we often like to make them up based upon how we perceive, which is put into our bias. So when we think about it from like a church standpoint, like preachers use this bias all the time to get people to think a certain way.
That's exactly right.
Predestination ring a bell? Some of you are good, some of you are bad, some of you are going to heaven, some of you are going to hell, whatever you know what that means. I stopped myself.
Well, and, in certain churches, for sure, they love to cast themselves as the victim.
Right.
Oh, Krista, have you ever seen that?
Let me think about it.
Okay, yes. Churches where, white males are the most,
Most persecuted group
the
in America.
white male is the most persecuted group in America.
People have said that to me with a straight face.
And with a straight face, we've heard this. For sure, the straight white male, the most persecuted person in America, is a conspiracy bias. If we can make ourselves out to be that kind of victim, then we can have a reason for all of the kind of hate stuff we're spewing.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
I just want to say, I think a victim mindset.
People don't like it.
Sorry, I know.
I think a victim mindset is one of the most powerful things ever because it makes everything else okay. When you've been wronged, to wrong back is justified. And I think there's a lot of confusion. I find myself often confused what narrative is correct in different situations because it can be so weirdly empowering and at the same time so depowering. And I just think we have to be careful with those kind of mindsets because of the power.
On sort of the other side, like just to clarify, sometimes there are victims.
Yes.
And it's not good to say, oh, you've never faced anything, or you haven't faced this, or you haven't faced that, and that didn't happen. So just to be clear, like, we're not saying...
Michelle's not saying.
Yeah.
You're cleaning up after me.
I think all of it's nuanced.
Yes.
Like it's very nuanced. Like,
Very nuanced.
sometimes in some people's stories, because we all make them up too, right? Like, I make up stories all the time about what people think of me. And it's not based in any kind of fact or any kind of reality.
Is it always good?
No, it's always bad. I always think
You
they
are
hate
the
me.
victim.
Yeah. Or I always think, or worse, I did something wrong, I've hurt them, I've made up something, and their bad day had nothing to do with me.
Yeah,
It had nothing to do with me whatsoever.
And so that's so true. And it's also true that sometimes we are the victim.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be able to clearly say that. It's never a safe place if there's never a victim. All right. Wow, and that's so nuanced, so tricky. And that's the whole point of this, sort of this bias thing. Comfort bias, or complacency or convenience bias. Man, this is me. Our brains welcome data that allows us to relax and to be happy. And our brains reject data that requires us to adjust work or inconvenience ourselves. The Lord wants me just to sit back and relax for the next rest of my life. This bias is strong for me, which doesn't mean that we're not supposed to do self-care. Yeah, again, the complexity of it, not the complexity bias. We want the nuanced part of this. We don't want the simple part of this.
Yeah, there's a numbing element to this bias.
Yeah.
Where you numb yourself from ever feeling, ever connecting, ever being present with others. You just stay where you're at.
Well, so here's a perfect example. I was talking to some people recently who have been hurt by the church and are wondering whether, they should step back in. Well, they need to come back to church and rest. They need to not be asked to do more than they're supposed to do. In fact, they need to just be okay with just being there or not being there. They need to just be okay. And there are some others, not this couple at all, but there are others who would rather just not do any work. And that's the complexity of it. There are times when we're really supposed to do the work. So, Logan, I'm thinking of you.
Yeah.
You needed time. You've been hurt by the church in really severe ways. You needed time away from the church, and you needed time to rest. And I don't know what happened, but there came a point where that ceased to be true. And then you needed to do the work to re-engage.
Yeah, there's something about just showing up that actually gives you grace to do work. There's just something about showing up that gives you grace to realize, oh, this isn't as hard as I thought it would be. This isn't as painful as I imagined in coming in here. unless you've been living under a rock until this year, I resisted coming here whatsoever. It was like basically a big. I'll just say the quiet part out loud for you. Yeah.
And this is somebody that's had real leadership positions in churches, not just a church, but in churches, and needed time away. Yeah. And needed to re-engage.
Yeah. I don't even know what that looks like yet. I'm like standing up here feeling very vulnerable. I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
No, none of us do, and that's okay, because we don't have confidence bias.
That was good. That was good.
I'm just going to mention these last two, and then we'll be done. Catastrophe bias. Our brains are hardwired to set a baseline of normalcy and assume that what feels normal has always been and always will be normal. Oh man. So, if we took our church back to the 1800s, it would make no sense anywhere, because it was so outside of the normal. It's taken time for the normal to change so that we could do this. I'm so interested in this idea. What in 100 years are we going to look back and say, what were we thinking?
Probably a lot.
Yeah, that it's just so normal to us that we can't not think of it.
Remember what Richard Rohr said about the Catholic Church?
Yeah.
Of them being in Latin. When he grew up, he's like, that was it. That was church. That's how it had to be. No debate. You were not supposed to understand what you're hearing. And now he's like, what? Why did I ever think that? But for his whole life, like for a good portion of his life, like that's what he thought.
So true. He's a Jesuit priest.
Yeah.
And the last one, cash bias. Our brains are wired to see within the framework of our own economy, and we see what helps us make money. So most of us, I don't think that's as strong a bias for most of us. Most of us are so poor that cash isn't a thing for us. We're just trying to be okay.
You think there's an appeal in it? Because it's like the system around there.
Yeah.
That's my
Well,
question.
I know when I was at Asbury, I wasn't brave enough to quit because of cash bias.
That makes sense.
And so they're getting rid of me, saved me that I couldn't do by myself.
There are other ways to translate that
Yeah.
encounter.
Yeah, I'm not trying to give them more grace than they should have. But
Good job.
Like that one time we were at Solomon's and you said, hey, the only way that I would start a church is if I didn't work at Asbury anymore. And then 2 weeks later, you were like, hey Derek, I don't work at Asbury anymore.
that's absolutely true. The only caveat about that is that when I said that first part, I already knew I was fired.
Okay, that makes more sense. I was like, what?
You said that the only way I would start a church.
I'm gonna say, I'm like, that was if you had it, that'd be a lot of foresight that I'm like, I feel like we need to have a talk after this about that.
No, but it is true. And before I knew that I was fired, we had similar conversations, like, what would we want the church to be like?
Right.
We'd want it to be affirming. Well, I can't do that if I'm working at Asbury. So you're right there. We had very much had those conversations for some months.
I'm not big on that, Calvinistic guy, but there was a whole lot of stuff. We're like, oh wait, that's weird.
Yeah, so, I think all of you know my story enough to know. I'm not a God's plan kind of guy. I just think most of that's rubbish. God has a plan for you, and it's to do this and this and this. Yeah. And then I look at my life, and it's like, boy, God had a good plan, didn't he? Because it's worked out just in these amazing ways. Think of the people of Beaumont. That I get to pastor at Beaumont is like, what in the world? How did that happen? Well, I don't have a good answer, so.
You deserve it.
Well, I think God was with you in it, like through each of those
Sure,
stages. So
absolutely.
because
God was
like,
with us in it.
because of that, the hard, right? Because it's easiest to like disconnect
Yeah.
from all things spiritual whatsoever. Because when something hard happens, you get very fatalistic. And you're kind of like, I don't see an off ramp. But it's something that I've always loved about you. It's like, I remember when I texted you about what happened at Asbury. You were so, I'm doing great. And my first thought was, why can he never be pissed off? But then when I like read Richard Rohr, I'm like, oh, this is like John's way of like easing into that second half of just
Yeah, that's right.
accepting.
Second half of life.
Yeah, accepting the flow
Yeah.
of where life takes you and seeing God in it, and you've really got the joy of like leading us in that and helping us move in that direction.
I think it maybe helps our church for us not to be angry,
Mm-hmm.
but to be, it's all right for you to be angry. I'm not saying that.
Got you.
Michelle, you
Yeah.
keep doing it.
I got all y'all. Me too.
I just triggered all these people that, what? I'm angry. I think it's all right. I think it's all right for us to, yeah, it's okay to be angry, I'm not saying that. But I think for us as a church, I think we want to be moving forward in a positive way. And I think it helps that I'm personally not particularly angry. You be as angry as you need.
I know we kind of skipped over the cash bias thing, but I actually have a really good example of that.
Go for it.
I was told growing up, especially as I started looking into politics and learning more about the left and how, that was very off limits growing up. And every time that I started to try to bring that up and have discussions with my family, I would be told that the older I got, the more I would understand and the more conservative I would get, because as I got older, I would make more money and I would want to keep it.
Yes.
That was literally the rhetoric. And so that, I'm really glad that I was told that, because it showed me exactly how not to treat my finances. Because the issues that I was bringing up were generally humanitarian issues, and then I was basically being told, you'll get more selfish as you get older, and things will stop mattering. So, cash bias.
That's good.
That's so
Yep.
good.
Not that they agreed with it, but like that's how it works.
Yep.
I just want to say a quick meme of that I keep on seeing where like it's like says, oh, when you get older you'll become, more conservative, and then it's like slide to the left.
Can I ask in curiosity, how many people like really grew up conservative here? Because
Wow, all but one.
Two. Wait, oh, yeah, one. Charlie?
Wow.
Two. Yeah.
all but two.
You grew up conservative, Charlie. You weren't personally, but you grew up in a house that was conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah, he grew up in a very conservative house.
Wow.
I know his house.
We are all friends here.
Yeah, no, we're all friends here. There's a lot of therapy that's going to need to happen in this room collectively.
Going back to you.
Can we count the Bush era or Republican different than conservative?
Is what?
Would Republican be considered different than conservative around 2003, 2004?
No.
Okay.
No, you could be a Bush conservative and totally be a, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, never mind.
Let's not
We all know what we're talking
let's not touch it.
Hey, so you all, we're going to have communion. And I love Jesus. I just love Jesus in the way that he loved and was so, seemed to be so aware of his own biases. And he did have them, by the way. He was in a culture. He had biases. But he seemed to be so aware of it that he was able just to love people no matter what. Even some people, I know that he gave a wink when he said, even the when the lady said, even the dogs eat the crumbs from under the table, he's like, you go, girl. I think, and other times I can think of like 3 instances where he was like that, where he knew what was really going on. And so now we're going to go back. You can take your communion elements, just eat them as you will, drink it as you will, and we'll be back here in just a minute, just as soon as we get our things. So even as you take this and drink this, we do it because as like a sign that we are doing this with Jesus. And the Holy Spirit is all things love. There is anything that is not love is not in the Holy Spirit. Only love. It's the only pure entity. None of us are pure. The Holy Spirit is pure. Pure love. And so we drink this and eat this in the name of Jesus, who, as God, as well as man, was this kind of pure love. And it's so good to be with you all today. Like you are food to me, even the way Jesus felt like that with his disciples, like that he needed them. I need you all. You're so much of Jesus to me. So thank you. Great to be with you tonight, this afternoon. And one important announcement. Wednesday, we are not having dinner at the Roller House. It is here at 6 o'clock with a bunch of wonderful older ladies who cook.
It's amazing, let me tell you.
Like, this is such a win for us to go from my cooking to these people. And so,
Your cooking is really good, John. Yeah.
oh, thank
Don't
you.
stop that for me.
Okay.
Go back and all late.
Go on. So, you can come to our house at 6:30 on Wednesday, but nobody will be there because we will be here at 6 o'clock in the fellowship hall, and then we'll have service. You don't have to stay, but if you want to, we have Ash Wednesday service Wednesday at 7. So we'll eat, and then we'll go right into the service. And again, you're welcome to
Maybe
stay.
some games. No? Okay, my
I
bad.
don't think so.
All right, I'm just telling you, people have been pulling me aside, telling me they want game time, so you're gonna have to carry that.
They do want that, absolutely. But I don't think that'll be this Wednesday. This
Okay, that's
Wednesday,
on you, you have to tell them.
we're going to be putting a cross on your forehead if you come. And of course, you don't have to stay, but you're welcome to. All right, and then 2 weeks, we'll be back in our house. Any other announcements?
Album, March 34th.
March?
March 34th and 4th.
Come to Asbury Worship Collective's live album recording, March 3rd and 4th, 7 p.m. Be there.
So if you suffer from church trauma, is it still a safe place?
Yes.
This is
Because it's written by a bunch of clear people.
It's mainly yeah, it's all. This is written mainly by a bunch of queer people, so that's pretty cool. I've been assured that it will be the gayest album yet.
Yes.
And so,
Even gayer than Mountain.
Gayer than Mountain?
It's a contender.
It's a contender with Mountain, she says. By the way, if you haven't, actually Mountain is, that's what in a center. I would, either of those albums by Asbury Worship Collective, you could totally listen to and be okay, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, attorney, it has a lot of great stuff. So, all right. We're going to be there in force. Hopefully everybody can come. Let's try and do it together.
Yes.
Let's see if we can do that. And let's go to whichever one we decide on together. Anything else? Matt, anything else you know of that coming up that we're supposed to be doing? Or John? Okay.
Shout out to Derek. How about the Chiefs?
Oh, yeah. Shout out to Derek for his Chiefs.
Yeah.
I heard that Derek was personally responsible for Kansas City winning.
That's damn right.
Well, that's kind of homophobic because my girlfriend was disappointed, so.
Oh. Okay. That's a good place to leave that. Wow. Love you all. See you on Wednesday or next week. And thanks, Matt, for that opening, and Logan for helping with our biases. Strengthen our biases. All right, love you all.